and we're now collecting it twice a year with all hazardous waste. Unfortunately, the 5% budget cut's going to have to come out of that account, which is going to limit us to the amount of times that we collect hazardous waste. For example, we may have to go to every other year and just collect it one time, which unfortunately for us is the more you wait, the more people may have a tendency to dump it someplace else in our water supply. Or when we do have hazardous waste, everybody kept it and then came to hazardous waste collection, the more people that come, the more it costs us to do that. So the price will rise. So this is, if you have to cut, and you cut here, that's what's going to happen. We're not going to be able to collect it as often, and it's going to end up in the ground someplace. I happen to live close to 3 pipes. I know that's federal land down there. And when I go hiking in the Blue Bear, I've seen plastic barrels, blue plastic barrels that have just been dumped in there. I've informed rangers so they can pick that up. This is something that occurs on a daily basis. At least with the townspeople, we've been able to do it by collecting from the town. But unfortunately, this is what's going to happen here. It's a risk. I'm not saying that the guarantee is going to happen because I'm not out there. But it is a risk you take when you do it. However, that's where it's going to go. Next one, landfill monitoring card. Okay, here's another example of the fiscal soundness of the town. Originally, when the dump closed, that dump, I believe we had somewhere about 300, we were mandated by DEP to put aside approximately $360,000 to operate this dump over the next, I believe it's 35 years in maintaining the cap, cleaning brush that grows into the swales, which are the rocky areas which collect runoff and then channel it away from the dump cap. $360,000. Guess what? Town of Templeton never borrowed that money, never opened an account, and have been paying the landfill monitoring account out of general fund. And since they didn't do that, now we have to cut from that. It's got to come out of general fund. Problem with that is DEP mandates that the landfill cap has to be fixed. It means it has to be mowed. At least we used to mow 3 times a year. We're down to 2 times a year. We have to monitor all the test wells down there. We've been able to persuade DEP to let us do it once a year, and that cuts down significantly on the monitoring costs. But the landfill still has to be mowed. It has to be fertilized. It has to be the swales have to be checked for brush. Seeds dropped in there and they grow over the years, and that has to be taken care of. The last time that was allowed to go, probably, I think it was 6 years ago, maybe, or approximately that. The last time that happened, it cost us $10,000 to mitigate that, because the landfill cap had to be done, and we had to get a bonded, certified contractor to go in and pull all the brush that had grown up in the soil. So again, we're saving money today, but the cap has to do it, or DEP is going to be all over us. So we have to do it. So we have to cut some of the landfill monitoring costs. But remember, we don't have a fund to draw on, which is what should have been done. Town of Templeton, in its infinite wisdom, decided to take the money out of general operating expenses. So slowly over the years, $380,000 is going to be spent to keep that landfill on. Next one, expense accounts. Okay, expense accounts. This represents another 5.5%. Problem with this one is that staff uses certifications. We can't pay for professional development. Even our new secretary has found out the amount of certifications that she has to have just to be able to explain this stuff over the phone. And somebody once said, Board of Health members should be able to do that. Board of Health members used to witness perk tests. Board of Health members used to do inspections. Yeah, maybe they did in the past, but nowadays, try doing an inspection without a certification, and you're going to find your butt in court so fast. You think Einstein was wrong about the speed of light. Because as soon as you make a determination, somebody's going to want to say, well, on what basis did you make that determination that I can't have this or I can't pass this? Okay? So, you need certified people in order to be able to do the inspections and do them in a way that avoids that's what's gonna happen with the expensive comp cuts, is we risk, we do risk, losing qualified people because they're not gonna be certified and can't make those decisions. And that's what it comes out to. We've been cutting and cutting and cutting for the last 3 years. We were up against the wall when we received this budget, and now we're having to cut an additional 5%. Those are the risks we run. It's up to the town, it's a democracy. If they vote for it, that's what could happen. Right? We're about to have this trying to protect the health of the people, and there's a certain amount of money that it's going to cost us to do that. That's where we're at. Any questions? Please.
The certification just thinking about, is that coming out of the account to certify?
It comes out of our budget for professional development.
Are they hired by hired employees?
Yes.
Why is it that they don't certify themselves? I mean,
They are
I
required.
have to pay for my own licenses.
I understand. They have certain licenses that they're required to have and certain qualifications before they accept a job. Once it's there, okay, it falls under our purview for professional development. It's nice to say they should do it themselves, but why? Why?
Why? Well, we're broke. That's why you could easily eliminate that cost, and if they like their interest in their job, they can get their own.
That's a very callous attitude, but I can see where it comes from. And if that's the way you work, but I absolutely do not agree with you. I'm sorry. So, you know, this is where it is, but it's not me or you to decide, fortunately, the town's going to decide. That's what I love about this town. You know, the town decides. I don't decide, you don't decide. One person speaking doesn't decide, we decide. So we decide, is this worth it or not? If it isn't, we cut it. And we take the hit from whatever's going to happen. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rick.
Only Board of Health and COAs on that, Dutton Drive.
Good evening. I'm here from the Cemetery Tax Department. I did come before the town hall meetings last year, late fall, talking about budget cuts. And like most people, I thought we were all set. Unfortunately, find out we're not. Right now, presently, the cemetery department is already taking a big hit this year, this current year. We lost a seasonal employee in the middle of August. He moved to the highway department when one of Bud's employees was sick, and so he was transferred up there. We didn't replace that position. We lost our foreman, our full-time foreman in the middle of September, and he is on medical similar to Bud's situation. We have not replaced that position. So presently, right now, we have been hit by more than 5%. Because of the hiring freeze, we have not been allowed to replace any of those positions. Coming right now, it's coming into the spring for us with Memorial Day coming up, all the cleanup for all your commons, your cemeteries, your ball fields, all the sports programs that are played on all the ball fields and things. All those things are in jeopardy because of the fact that we have a hiring freeze and we cannot hire. So that's the impact that we're feeling right now. We're already feeling
let's hear from Bethany, and then we'll take some questions and make our comments.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bethany Lillis, and I am the Council on Aging Director. I do have just 3 slides. Based on the selectmen's mandate, we did go ahead and make cuts to our budget. We thought it was, and when I say we, I mean the Council on Aging Board and myself, we thought it was fiscally prudent to do whatever we could do in order to help lessen the shortfall of $505,000, even though our budget is minuscule in comparison to the deficit as a whole. We did have the ability to make a cut based on a grant that was applied for and received by my predecessor, and the funding didn't kick in until I came on board. So as on the whole, we're expecting to turn back to the town a little over $13,000, almost $14,000, which is a 18% decrease in the town portion of our budget as a whole. In order to show you how we did that, that is the next slide. So if you look at all of the Council on Aging's budget, which includes the portion that comes from the town, the portion that comes from the state, and the portion that comes from our funding from the Massachusetts Regional Transit Authority, 4% of our budget cut came from the line item that is my salary. I am paid half by the town and half by Massachusetts Regional Transit Authority. My position was vacant for almost the entirety of July 2013, and so that was a natural savings to the town. We had a 1.1% reduction because we had an outreach position, a person who left on their own in August. The position that this person held, although it is named outreach, their job duties were very different. Most of the time, their job duties were reaching out to seniors and sending them birthday cards and calling seniors to let them give them a well wish for their birthday. We did not fill that position. We did fill it with a volunteer, and slowly over this fiscal year, some of those hours, not all of them, but some of those hours have gone into the bookkeeper. The building of the new senior center has really picked up speed. It takes up a great deal of my time, and I've had to rely on our bookkeeper a little bit more in order to get some of the day-to-day stuff done. It is a difference of 15 hours a week instead of 10 hours a week for that bookkeeper, so it's not substantial. A 6.6% reduction came in the elimination of our social service coordinator position. This elimination is only possible through the Community Development Block Grant that was applied for in February 2013, and subsequently the SNAP grant that we just found out we got a couple months ago will also help to cover a grant-funded position that allows us to maintain the outreach services that we have, yet not impact the town financially. As far as our expenses go, our entire expense budget is $4,000. 90% of that is our lease for our photocopier. We print our newsletter in-house, which is a cost savings for the town. And so with only $405 left in our expense budget for the entire year, you can see how there really wasn't any room for us to make cost savings there. The last slide, we're all looking at each other saying, who's doing that? It's not me.
It's picking up feedback from behind. You can move the mic so it makes this way, maybe.
I don't know if you want to do the chief suggestion.
Is it the mic on the table? Let's do it.
There we go. The last slide is how the Council on Aging would be impacted if we had to endure further cuts, whether it was more cuts this year or additional cuts next fiscal year. This is what we'd be left with. Our food pantry is currently open 8 days a month, and we would have to cut that down. How much we'd have to cut, it depends on what type of cut is given to us. But any type of cut at this point would mean food pantry hours reduced. We would have to reduce the number of days a week that Meals on Wheels are delivered. Right now, we deliver Monday through Friday. Our Meals on Wheels drivers, they're paid a minimal wage. They come in, they deliver their meals, they go home. We'd have to cut into that. When our SNAP and Community Development Block Grants are done in December of 2014, we would no longer be able to have an outreach position. I seek grants every opportunity I get, but there is no guarantee in any of that. And when the person was hired for this position, they were told that it was a temporary position and that the likelihood of it ending December 2014 was high. With the elimination of our outreach, we will no longer be able to collaborate with fire, EMS, police, Veteran Services, Board of Health. We're actively working as a group to be able to serve our town better, and we're starting to meet together and figure out what we can do in order to serve the seniors that are falling through the cracks. We would not be able to participate in that initiative. Screening seniors for what benefits that they might be applicable for and helping them with those applications would be something we would not be able to do, and our wellness checks and friendly visits would have to end as well. We would, with the loss of this person, we would then no longer have enough staffing to operate the new senior center for a full 40 hours a week, and we'd be looking like more of a 30-hour-a-week operation. The thing on this list that you don't see is our transportation program. Our transportation program, for the most part, is funded by the Montechusett Regional Transit Authority. And the reason why I say that for the most part is our department relies very heavily on the highway department. The highway department, they fix all of our vans except for one that is still owned by MART. They gas all of our vehicles except for the one that is still owned by MART. So although MART would still be able to fund the driver, if Bud's highway department budget gets cut and it affects fuel and it affects maintenance, I might have funding for a driver, but I might not have a vehicle that's up and running, and I might not have the gas to run it. So there is when one department gets impacted, it really does overflow onto the other departments. Are there any Council on Aging questions I can answer before I sit? Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bethany. So I appreciate all the department heads coming tonight and talking, and hopefully it's been a good experience for everybody to see. The departments have really been on a tight budget, have been level funded for the last few years. We've made small cuts as necessary, and they're really, they're right on the edge. So any additional cuts that we might have to make are going to be, devastating to the departments and the services that we provide for the families. So let's go ahead and take questions. Let's let Virginia go first, since she started.
Well, I have several things, and I agree with the young lady that spoke up in the back. There are too many questions that have not been answered, have not been answered directly or completely, and I think it's time to start just getting all the information out there so people don't have these things lurking in the background. Geez, I don't dare to do that because I never got an answer to this question, and I think something else is going on. For instance, my question right along is that how much money is in stabilization? Before you even answer that, before the override, we had an informational meeting like this, and at that meeting, I told there was no money. I was told there was no money in the stabilization fund. After the override, I found out I was told that there was $250,000 in the stabilization fund. Subsequently, I read in the paper now that there's $108,000 in the stabilization fund. So why the discrepancy in amounts? And if there was money in there after that override was taken, then I was lied to at that meeting, because I was told that the money, the $620,000, would pay for the school's appropriation and the extra hours for the people who had lost their hours the prior year. And and that would have been fun, except all of a sudden now we had money in stabilization after the override money came. I don't want to be lied to, I don't want to be deceived, I want to know what's happening, because like these other people are saying, all the people I'm talking to out there are very reluctant to go for another override. And I think you need to understand that ahead of time, because you need to have Plan B ready. There's a lot of people out there talking, and they're not anxious to go for another override.
I can't account for any numbers that you were given in the past, but I can assure you that there is a stabilization fund, and that the amount in the stabilization fund is $103,000. Now,
What number?
let me explain. I looked at a computer printout, and a 3 looks like an 8, and the ink in the printer was not good. And I thought it was an 8. I rechecked it, it was a 3, okay? So, but it's the same amount. It hasn't changed, and
Okay, I'll buy that one.
I'm not aware of any transfers out of stabilization, so it's been $103,000, I guess, for some time.
If there was no money in there before the override, how did the money get in there after the override if we didn't have any money to put in there?
I can't explain how the money got into stabilization, other than the only way it can be put there is by a 2/3 vote at the town meeting.
Well, that's the only way it's supposed to be put in.
Right. It cannot be legally put there any other way. I have found that financial management has been shoddy. I could say harsher words. But it just hasn't measured up. It's going to take a little time to correct that. I think it is being corrected. And it's critically important to do that. We'll try to find the information that apparently the lady in the back would like to have. I can't always get good information right now, because these numbers are still being reassembled, and mistakes on the general ledger and so forth are being fixed. I would say that progress is being made. That's all I can say to you. And I am confident that going forward, the town will have good, I would hope excellent, financial management, because we have the people in place who can do the job. And we'll get those numbers. This is the first time I have heard, frankly, that there's some issues regarding betterment assessments. And here's the other thing that I have found, and that is that in some instances, reimbursements and monies that have come from various sources have not been tracked well. They have been put into the general fund, and I'm not surprised to hear that these other issues exist. More than that, I can't say. I can assure you, though, that I've checked several times, and that number is $103,000 in the stabilization fund, and there's no legal way that that could be there without a vote at the town meeting based upon an article at the town meeting.
About the other selectmen, they were here when that statement was made that we had no money in the stabilization before that override vote.
Again, I'm not an accountant. The information that we had at the time was there was not. The accountant that we have now, Brett has actually gone through the town meeting warrants and rebuilt all of the transactions that should have been taking place. And as these transactions were rebuilt, the mistakes were made in the past, came to light, were corrected, and now the balance is there. I mean, it's
Correct.
And that we owe him now somewhere in the order of $10,000.
Correct.
How are we planning on paying $10,000 to somebody? How can you just charge that when you have this kind of a deficit in the town?
Mr. Angel was hired to do work in November of last year. When I came here, I saw an invoice for, I think, nearly $7,000. We got an update of that, and we went to the advisory board last night, and they transferred from their reserve funds that amount to pay him, $10,000 and change.
We're paying this guy somewhere in the order of $100 an hour, is that correct?
The rate is $85 an hour.
I don't understand, was some kind of a under the table deal made with this guy? Why would he be working all this time without getting paid? Was he expecting to become the accountant when all of this was?
There were no funds in the budget to pay him. And a reserve transfer was the only option that was available at the time. I'm not going to defend borrowing money to operate, and I'm not going to defend having an accountant and a treasurer doing the same job. What I'm trying to say to you, though, is that we are correcting those problems. Going forward, the financial management of the town will be greatly improved, and the town will be able to provide good information to the residents. I would be upset too if I were told this and that, and I've had a certain amount of frustration in 2 months, quite frankly, trying to get accurate data myself. I have never encountered a set of books so completely screwed up in some 30 years in government. I have never seen anything like it. And that's the downside. The upside is this is being corrected.
Well, that's good to hear that that's the intent, that it's being corrected, but it's not been corrected yet. And you can understand why residents would be hard pressed to try to do another override when we're still in the middle of this big mess. And quite frankly, and I'm on a fixed income, a lot of people here are on a fixed income.
Everybody's on a fixed income.
We just got our taxes raised by $1 a thousand for the, I mean, I don't think we've even seen that.
You haven't seen that
Now
yet.
you're asking to put another one on top of that one, and that, quite frankly, is a concern to me. I agree with Mr. Jelinowski. The town needs that, but I want to feel good when I do this. I want to feel like it's going to the right places and doing the right thing. I don't want to feel like we're just correcting somebody's mistakes over and over again. I want it to be the fix for the town.
In the discussions that I have had with the elected board and others in the town government, it's clear that credibility is the issue. And it's clear that in trying to address the problems that we have, we don't have any credibility. And we've been pulling our hair out trying to figure out how to communicate to the residents of the town that we take these issues very seriously and are determined and committed to fixing them. At one point, I even thought to myself, if the town would agree to this override, based upon some conditions or promises, shall we say, promises that we will collect delinquent taxes, that we will sell foreclosed property, that we will write the financial management of the town as determined by the Department of Revenue, obviously. They're the ones that tell us whether we're doing well or whether we're not doing well. And let's throw in some other problems that we face. And I think perhaps one way that we could handle this would be to say to the residents, these issues will be addressed. It won't be done immediately, but over the course of a couple of months, maybe 3 months, These issues will be addressed, they will be fixed, and quite frankly, if it isn't done, I would agree that we ought to have an underride and take the money back if we can't get it done.
Yeah, let's hear from the gentleman in the back. We haven't heard from yet.
Yeah, I have two questions. One, you keep saying that you have a better financial people in place. I'm wondering who that is. The acting town accountant is leaving at the end of the month, and at least via the Garden News, nothing's being done to replace him yet. You have a treasurer.
That's not correct, sir.
You have a treasurer that was just let go, and we have somebody new that is still being trained, taking a place, and we have you that is an interim. So I'm trying to see, as a town, where our better financial people are, because it does not seem like we have them in place yet.
I mean, here's the test. The test is, will the Department of Revenue accept the information that the town has provided? In the past, they haven't. I believe that they are going to accept the information that has been provided in the last week and the information that we will have to provide in the next budget year. That's your test. And I understand your doubts. We work within some limits and parameters. I was not satisfied with the information that was being provided in the Treasurer's office and thought it was necessary to make a change. And obviously, in the middle of a crisis, hiring a treasurer, a permanent treasurer, is going to take perhaps 2 or 3 months. And so we have someone who's going to be acting treasurer who has done excellent work for the treasurer's office over the course of the last few months. I've seen it, and I have confidence that although there's a training process underway, that this is going to work. And I'm in touch with it. I'm only here 2 days a week, but I'm in touch with it both when I'm here as well as through email when I'm not here. So I know it's a leap of faith, but I think this will work well. And that person that has been appointed is getting up to speed quickly and can do the job. If I thought otherwise, I mean, I don't want to complicate the problems of the town by putting someone there who can't get it done and can't get accurate data to the Board of Selectmen, myself, and the residents of the town. Secondly, we are losing our town accountant. Another thing we can't control. I am going to move Matt Angel into that office on a temporary basis to continue doing the work of the accounting office, and hope to hire a permanent town accountant in due time, as soon as we can see our way beyond the current crisis.
And my second question is, earlier in the night, you said that the Department of Revenue could step in if our finances are not in order by the end of the month, 31st. We have a town meeting on the 29th, 2 days before that possibly we're going to be asking for an override. That step is only the first step.
Right.
We still have to go to a ballot for that.
Yes.
So if we vote on the 29th for an override, and none of the other things pass, we cannot right our ship by the 31st.
Correct.
Because we can't, so how is the DOR not going to come in and take over our town by that?
The DOR wants to see real progress. Today, I had an email from the DOR office in Springfield saying, we need to know your plan. They want it fixed by the end of the month, but if we have a plan, namely an override, they will be patient until we can actually conduct an election.
And how long does that take?
Well, let's assume the town meeting does give its approval. When will we have the election? Mid-April, I guess. We'd have to schedule it. It would have to be scheduled.
I think, can I just clarify that a little bit? I think today at the department head meeting, the town clerk was there, and she said that we could do it at the annual, I I thought she said you have to have a certain
Yeah, we
amount
do.
of time. And did I hear that correctly today? Thank you. That it would be, is that May 5th? And that it would be done then, and it would be part of that, and, you know, to keep having, the elections does cost the town money, but we would have that plan in place, and you're absolutely right, that, you know, on town meeting floor, it's always been my feeling, this is only my opinion, that there's 200 or 300 or 400 residents there, it should go to the ballot. It shouldn't just be, I mean, why should we just knock that down when the rest of the townspeople should have that opportunity to say yes or no? So one would hope that it would go to ballot.
It has to go to the House.
Right, so, you know, so at that point, that plan would be in place.
As we all know in this
Yeah.
town, 90% of your voters say yes on town floor because everyone's looking over your shoulder.
Mhm.
And as soon as they get in that little square box, there's
Yep.
not enough ink in that black marker to put no. That's just the way this town is.
All right, Wayne, yeah, who's that?
First of all, I'd like to say I'm glad to be able to take these steps to correct some of the positions and people who are in certain positions. But I guess I have a question. From what I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm a little naive, this is still learning. But is it true that we have the advisory board who certifies our budget? Is that true? And then that advisory board, in their opinion, granted they're all volunteer and I respect their positions, but in their opinion, advise the public as to how they feel we should vote.
Yeah, they will present the budget to the town.
So they approve it, they present it, and then they make recommendations.
They will make recommendations on the warrant articles.
Don't you think that's a little bit of a
It is
conflict of interest?
It is.
Is that looking to be corrected also?
That the advisory board should not
The
make
advisory
recommendations.
board certifies our budget. In their own personal opinions, they make recommendations on how the money should be spent.
Well, the process is that,
And then they advise the public during the special, during the meetings on their recommendations.
So there is no check and balance to it, they're just doing the whole shebang.
well,
And they're not
the town meeting is the highest authority of the town. The advisory board is a committee of the town meeting. They're not involved with the town government. They are a separate committee of the town meeting. The department heads are sent spreadsheets in the spring. They're asked to fill out the spreadsheets and send them to the advisory board, basically requesting a budget for the next year. The advisory board then assembles those and presents a budget recommendation to the town meeting. And you know, this is sort of been the standard in town meetings across New England for many years, many centuries.
Has somebody possibly looked into that bylaw or looked into changing it? I mean, me personally coming in, I voted based off of their recommendations, not knowing any better. If I was uneducated, I went based off of their recommendations, and I just don't feel that is right, and I think that that's why we're in the position that we're in.
I think they would probably, I mean, they can speak for themselves, I think they would say that they are the check and balance. That on this side, you have people who are part of the government, the department heads, and they are part of the town meeting side. And they are the check upon the town departments, as well as the Board of Selectmen, and they make recommendations to the town meeting. And they're a committee of your town meeting appointed by the moderator. Everybody appointed by the moderator, yes. Appointed by the elected moderator of the town, so.
Yeah, I was wondering when it came to pay the forensic accountant, I never remember a line item on the green sheet at town meeting for a forensic accountant. So
Right.
if money's not appropriated for that position, how is it that the advisory board approved money to pay a position that wasn't?
There was no money in the town budget, you're correct. No line item for that.
So it wasn't voted on by the
The forensic
people that made
accountant
that
was
position?
hired in November. I'm not sure of the circumstances there. But the charge to this accountant was to help fix the books. And although there was no line item to pay the individual, the advisory board does have a reserve fund for circumstances like this. They transferred money from their reserve.
So to pay for positions that weren't voted at town meeting?
Correct. I don't know that this,
Is that an emergency?
pardon?
He's not an employee.
Not an employee.
That's being considered an emergency.
But he was working for him the year before.
Exactly.
I think if you look at the state of our books, and the situation we're in right now, I think you can justify having a forensic accountant who has to rebuild something that what Marco has been in the town government, cities and towns, for over 30 years. And he says he's never seen a set of books so thoroughly screwed up. I think we needed to have a forensic accountant to help straighten out this problem.
I should have used a little more diplomatic language, but
Well, I just don't see where the problem is. You know, I hear that this month is done, that month is done, then you say, okay, what's the end balance? But like, the betterment account, well, we don't know that.
I haven't had that
I
question
don't know.
before. Again, if we can get that communicated, we'll have an answer to that. I can get an answer to that.
Well, the same questions have been asked for quite some time at different meetings. And my other question is, when it came to like the reimbursement for the school project, and you were talking about the money coming back to the town, you said, well, put it in the general fund, so I'm not gonna quote you, but more or less it'd be in free cash for next year. Well, wouldn't you take that money and pay off the loan?
No. No,
Because
no.
that's the way it's sold to the people.
Okay.
So-
The law that applies to all the cities and towns in the Commonwealth is that any revenue that you collect during the year, fees, charges, reimbursements, state aid, you name it, money that comes in that's not part of your budget must go to the general fund. And then it flushes out to free cash next year and can be used in the budget process the following year.
Well, if it's sold at town meeting, that we're only gonna pay X amount of dollars because
Right.
X amount is gonna be reimbursed.
Well, yes, that's true.
So how do you just throw that money back in the general fund?
Well, the town has to pay the entire obligation for a bond.
Yeah,
If it's reimbursed 60% for a school, for example, reimbursement comes in, goes into the general fund. By law, it must go into the general fund. Becomes free cash and is, in a sense, utilized the following year to offset, we could say it's used to offset
Well, you
part
don't
of that
pay
debt. We have to pay the
You're not
debt.
really gonna have it next year,
Huh?
free cash,
Pardon?
per se.
Sorry? I mean, we're bound by state regulations here, and
Yeah.
that's the way we have to do it.
And the term free cash isn't free. I mean, it's money that's in the budget that becomes usable.
But we're getting free money.
Okay? It becomes
Not
usable,
free.
so it becomes usable funds for next year. It's not free money that just appears. So the fact that it goes to the general fund and becomes available for next year, to then be appropriated to pay the debt. So that's kind of how the process works. Yes, Councilman?
I don't doubt for a second that you've got some very competent people trying to straighten out this financial situation, which clearly didn't happen overnight, okay? And it's gonna take a long time to come out in the wash, and I'd be the last one to get in your knickers and tell you which account this should go in, which account that should come from. So that's your job, or the people that you're working with job. My question though is, early on in your slides, you said that the advisory committee recommended a combination of solutions, free cash, stabilization money, partial override. I would like to know what the selectmen think about that and where they stand, because it's going to be their job, and I expect them to do it on town floors to sell whatever solution seems to be the best one.
Excuse me, I wasn't
I don't hear
clear.
much from you guys.
Okay, I wasn't clear on that. I just offered all the potential ways to solve the problem. the advisory committee last night advised that the Article number 1 be approved for the amount of $505,000. In other words, they're saying, solve the problem with taxes.
Okay, that wasn't that clear to me anyway, and I think that's the right way to go, and I want to know where the selectmen stand on that, because like what I suggested in the first place, using a combination of solutions, that's just going to compound the problem. You need to raise the taxes, get it done once and for all. Where do you guys stand? Start with you, Julie.
Well, before the advisory board met, and before we had any inkling, I don't believe free cash is going to be coming in at the levels that were anticipated. So we're not going to be able to cover the shortfall with free cash. I was hoping that we would be able to cover the shortfall with free cash stabilization and some cuts to make up the difference. We also learned that there was a $127,000 correction found by Deb Wagner from the DOR. She came in and looked at the books, and that was in the town's favor. So it wasn't a $505,000 shortfall, it was $378 at that point. So I thought at that point we could look at free cash, stabilization, some cuts to make up the difference. We're not going to be able to do that. So I was hoping at that point we could wait, make those cuts, use free cash stabilization, make up the shortfall for 14, and then go for an override for 15 to cover the structural deficit. I don't think we're going to be able to do that anymore. So I've changed my position to think that we do have to go for the override, and it should be for the full amount that we need to cover that structural deficit. It's not going to build up a capital fund right away, but if we stop using free cash, we stop using stabilization, as we've done over the years, we can start to accrue money in these accounts so that we can develop a capital plan and actually fund it. So that we can.
It's an ugly and unpopular solution, but I think it's the right one.
Well,
No.
I don't know if it'll work, okay? To get the override passed in the fall, we took everyone out there on the same page. That's what it took to get that override passed. I don't know what the will of the people are.
Take marketing, you gotta get in the press, you gotta get in the paper, you gotta start talking to constituents. I don't hear much from anybody, other than the occasional blurb on that online blog thing. Where do you stand, Diane?
I'm sorry, all along I have said that we need an override, so I'm not sure why you don't think that you know where my position is. It has been stated since before I was elected on this board to not use free cash and to not use stabilization, and I agree with Virginia that it was told we had no stabilization, so that's not even money that I was thinking that we had. So to do a course of cuts also, well, I asked for impact statements because these cuts that are being made are extremely detrimental to every single department, and it's not going to fix from this year to the next. So I've been in favor of an override all along. I don't like it. I know that you might not like it, but we have to rally the people because it's more, you know, you can use the one-time revenue now, but 2 months from now is the annual town meeting, and now we're coming back and saying, oh, by the way, we need 300,000, we need 500,000. So I've been a proponent of the override all along. It's unfortunate that we had this mistake made. I think too that I've been doing, I will say to address, is it your question in the back in the green, I've started to do a ton of research, and I feel like there's not enough check and balance for me as I'm your elected official, you elected me. I have not seen all the budgets yet. I don't remember when all that was told to like come out. You know, I don't want to see any more cuts. There, as you can see by this, you know, I want to see every single budget, and I think that we should see them, and then we give them to the advisory board, period. I thought that's the way it was supposed to work all these years, and I feel like, oh my God, am I crazy? But I've been asking a lot of questions today. I actually asked Will a few questions, and I feel like we haven't had that check and balance, but perhaps I'm wrong. So that's where I stand on that, absolutely.
Mr. Morrison?
Yeah, I was hoping also that we would have enough, you know, free cash, and more stabilization to cover the shortfall, especially once we found the 127 with the DOR, brought it down to 378. And then for the fall town meeting, gone to the people and asked for an override.
one more question to Mr.
Good.
Marco, is it?
Yes.
You've been in government for quite a few years, you mentioned. We can't be the only town that's faced this situation in the past that I'm sure you're probably aware of. In your experience, what's been the solution to a situation like this? Or is every situation must be different, but what would be your recommendation?
First of all, on the whole issue of taxes versus one-time revenue, like free cash, I think the Department of Revenue would recommend to all the cities and towns that you support your operating budget with taxes, and that you use free cash or capital one-time purchases. You know, buy a truck with it, because that expense doesn't recur next year necessarily. And you use your stabilization fund as a reserve for emergencies, and gradually build it up, by the way. So I think that's the three-way split that would be considered ideal by the state. And I agree with that. I also agree that one way to have additional involvement here would be to follow a pattern that is pretty common, and that is the budget process is initiated by the Board of Selectmen. They ask the departments for their budget requests, they bring it together, and typically they say to the town administrator or manager, put it all together and give us an omnibus budget. They then look at it, massage it, make changes, and then they vote one way or the other, up or down, and then they give it to the advisory committee or the finance committee. And the finance committee, again, being a committee of the town meeting, not part of the executive side, does its job. It looks at the recommended spending and it makes changes, recommends more, recommends less, but they stand up on the floor and say, this is what the selectmen want, this is what we think you ought to do. And then the town meeting votes one way or the other. I think that kind of process does add a little complexity and maybe some checks and balances. And if in fact the departments aren't submitting good numbers, if we're not getting good numbers from the various financial offices, first place that you hear complaints would be the Board of Selectmen, not the. So it's a little more complicated process, but I think that's the way many towns do it. Frankly, in my career, I was a town manager in Ipswich. I retired out of Ipswich. That's the way it worked. We would send out spreadsheets to every department. We'd have prior years, and we'd have actuals for the current year, and we'd ask them what they were requesting for the new year. I would put it all together into one big spreadsheet, all the departments, see that it's balanced at the bottom with projected revenues. We'd have a revenue sheet as well, projecting, showing past revenues, projecting the future, make it balanced. I give it to the Board of Selectmen. They would then do their process, they would vote it, and then they would give it to the advisory committee or the finance committee.
What Mr. Markle is talking about right now is what we did in this town for many years. And then over the last couple of years, they chose to change that operation. The Board of Selectmen was all for having the finance board do it. I think we need to go back to that situation to get enough checks and balances in the system. The other thing is that the Moody's Investment Services stated when we got our bond rating lowered last year, one of the reasons was A, because the administrative board in this town did not know enough about the finances of the town. That was kind of the sum and substance of their reasoning for it. Also, another reason was that we did use all our one-time cash, free cash, and all of those things for all that time, and they suggested that not happen anymore. So.
And a number of towns do use free cash to support the operating budget, but it's considered an irresponsible financial practice. Not illegal, but nevertheless, not the responsible way to do it.
I know that businesses sometimes have accountants and auditors come in and certify their financial statements, and that lends a certain credibility to what information
think the regulatory body is the State Department of Revenue.
And
If they accept the data that's submitted in those two critical forms, and they're good. They're very good.
then, if we have had shoddy financial practices, did the Department of Revenue kick this back last year or the year before? Because if they are the checks and balances, then why didn't this come up and why didn't they notice this? Or, I guess that's what I'm concerned about, is where did the ball get dropped? If it's the DOR, then can they help us, or can someone explain it?
Again, I can't speak very accurately about the past, but I think anyone talking to our representative, who happens to be in the Springfield office of the DOR, or talking to